connectivity where you can text somebody, okay? So with TI instruments and stuff, I think we're fine. I don't want you to use your phone all the time, okay? I'm gonna ask you to put your phone away, your backpack under your desk or something. It's fine to have a water or a water bottle out, I don't mind that. And your calculator. But you need the big Scantron. I would, before you come to class, have your name and section and COSC and all those things bubbled out, okay? It's not worth wasting time doing that when you get to class. On that note, the way the Scantron office works, if you guys don't bubble in something, your name or your UIN, it kicks it out and I've got to sit there and bubble it in for you. And if I got to do that, then I'm going to take points off. So don't lose points over substitution. I guess I'll screen.
Yeah. Okay. Let's run through the slides real quick, and then I'm going to talk about. There's going to be one big ugly problem on there that I want to kind of prep you guys for. Okay. Probably not that much to do on the beginning. I don't ask anything about my personal history or whatever. That's not relevant to being an estimator or a project manager. I also don't like any of those questions like who's the department head or what color tie did I wear on this day. You won't see anything like that, okay, guys? The questions I ask to be relevant to our class material. I think that there's some. You don't really need to have this memorized, the definition of estimating. This is probably a decent slide that might have something touching on it. You know, the fact that estimating class is not just for estimators. Why is it important for those of y'all that are going to be PMs or superintendents? Okay. I'm going to fly through this guys today, so we got seven slides together. Some of these definitions you do not need to have them memorized. Okay, but you should understand what these words mean. Okay, I think there's one or two of these that I touch on. RFP, and I use some of these abbreviations in some of my questions. Okay. This addendum versus a change order. I don't know that I test over on this test about that, but I know that's a test question on my second test. So you guys should understand what that difference is. All right, let's see, I'm looking for a couple things in particular. You should understand the difference between fee and profit. Fee is the percentage we collect on top of doing the job. Profit is what you have after you finish the job and how much you paid. Understand what turnkey pricing is. I've got a definition here, but we touch on it more fully in a later slide. But efficiency, understand what efficiency is. We'll talk more about it when we get to that slide. Okay. No, ma'am. You guys will not be doing any takeoff on my exams, okay? I do have one problem. I got two problems, I think, where I verbally give you some dimensions of something and ask you to calculate something, okay? There's no measuring on that. Okay, lecture 2. Okay, know the differences between budgetary, the engineer's estimate, the design development estimate, conceptual estimate. Know those terms and understand how they fall into the process, okay? Which is the next several slides here. This is an important point here in this class, that the further along your design goes, the less control you have over the price. Okay? It should be pretty self-evident. If your early design, you can make bigger changes that are going to affect the price. Understand how the way you look at an estimate could differ for being a general contractor versus a subcontractor, i.e. a general contractor is going to be generally less granular. That term granular, I usually get a few people asking on the test, what do I mean by that? Granular means detailed and broken down into pieces, okay? There's going to be less of that as a general contractor than your subcontractor, okay? These are all things you should know, but I don't know that I tell you over them. Okay, quantity takeoff. I gave some good habits in the next couple of slides here. Defining it, you guys all should know what it is right now. Accurate quantity takeoff is essential for creating accurate estimates. No matter what else you do, how trackable it is, if you don't have an accurate estimate, you don't have the right estimate. Okay. First thing I said that you should probably do on every page when you're in OSD, strength scale. There's a couple of questions about one or two of them. Mostly it's what I stressed. By the way, my questions, first off, questions I've asked in the quizzes, you might see again or something similar. Also, some of my questions tend to give you a situation where you have to apply one of these things rather than just ask something that's exactly parroted off the slide, okay? Just be aware of that. All right, this was project bidding process. Talking about soliciting subcontractors, you can use a Excel sheet that you got maintained, or a database, or a piece of software. But at the end of the day, one of the most important things you can do is make a phone call to your sub. Okay. How do we build an estimate? We usually start with specifications to outline what that's supposed to look like. Make sure we got everything. Bid days are usually Tuesday or Thursday at 2 p.m., but not always. This last note here, it's very common for senior PMs or project executives to be involved on bid day analyzing bids, even though they're not estimators. All right, the process of how things go on bid day. You guys are going to see this firsthand on our bid day exercise, but for purposes of today's exam, kind of understand that, why do bids come in late on bid day? Why are they coming in an hour or two before? Going up? Limit bid shop. Okay, bid tabs. I started talking a little bit bid tabs here, but we're going to touch that later, so I'll get to it. Buyout issues. We talked about some ethics there. I told some stories about PMs that I've worked with that just magically, whenever I turned it over to them, they found something that wasn't low on the guy they didn't want to use, and the guy they used somehow became low, right? And we talked about what some of those pitfalls were, and namely that your subcontractors are smarter than that, and they know what's going on, and they'll stop bidding you if you get a reputation for that. Yeah. All right, this was our lecture on consultant reports. spent a long time talking about geotechnical, because we had a geotechnical, assignment that was coming up. Some things that are important from this, first off, go back and revisit your geotechnical assignment, okay? I think I mentioned the other day, but my exam's probably around 60% notes and stuff that I said in lecture, about 40% concepts that we learned on the assignment. So, just a general note here, it's worth going through and revisiting how you ran through calculations or what questions you asked on the assignment, okay? So I spent a few minutes there. I know there's at least 2 questions that come from that geotechnical assignment, okay? What do we use a geotechnical report? You know, that's what this slide is about. It helps us during due diligence period. It helps us decide in an early conceptual stage, how should we be figuring this foundation system, for instance. And that was one of the questions we had on the geotechnical assignment was, should we use piers or should we use slab on grade, right? And that's just the exact way that I would use that on an early budget. Spend some time here on this water table issues for geotechnical. That's one of the major items that we're concerned about in a geotechnical report, as far as the water table, because it's going to have an outsized impact on our construction methodology. I don't ask you on the exam how to read a boring log. So this is good knowledge for you, but it's not tested directly on the exam. Okay, now we move into environmental reports. We said environmental reports are generally divided up into 2 phases. You have a phase 1 report and a phase 2. Phase 1 essentially tries to identify, do we have a potential problem for environmental concerns on this site? It does not generally define the extent of the problem. There's going to be very limited testing, if any. Really just trying to say, hey, we've looked at the history of the site. We've looked at the professional databases that are out there. We think you do or do not have cause to be concerned about environmental issues. If the consultant does have environmental concerns, they'll go to a phase 2, and then they'll do some testing, and it's going to depend a lot on what they find. You know, if it's asbestos, they may do asbestos testing. If it's petroleum products in the soil, they may do soils testing. So they'll use that testing to try to identify, for bid purposes, what's the extent of the problem and what do we have to do to mitigate it. Talk about acoustic reports here, which is controlling sound. I went through just some things that I've run across on different projects. This was an excerpt from on the partition wall between units on the Olive project. We've also got more now that we're getting into the Olive project. Talked about windows and those things that can be affected by sound. I showed here an excerpt from the window schedule on Olive, where just to prove the point about sometimes if a report is not directly outlined in the contract, it may be included by reference. The plans on Olive show sound ratings and windows. See the acoustical report. And then we very briefly talked about some other ones. To be honest, I think all the test questions come out off of the first 3 that I talked about. That was detailed methane system on Olive. You don't have to have that memorized or anything. It just shows you that there is one. All right, bid tabs. Let's talk about bid tabs. And we did an assignment on it. There will not be a bid tab on this exam. Just so you know, there will be a bid tab on the second. Okay. So I'll test over that when you've got a little more experience on it. For now, this is in really big letters, right? You want to know the primary purposes of the bid tab are to figure out who's low, who's okay. By figuring out who's low, you need to try to figure out what is their price comparing fairly between subs on apples to apples basis, right? And to be complete, you need to know that they have everything included in their proposal that matches what you wish that they would include in other students. We went through a lot of specifics on this. You don't need to have these specifics memorized at all. This was just strictly to try to illustrate some points on what kind of things to be on. You should understand that the scope of work document you guys use on the bid time assignment is not a contract document in the sense that it comes from the architect. It is a subcontract document if you, as the GC, choose to use it to build that. Okay. I stress that while we are making certain assumptions according to a strict set of requirements in this class, in real life, if you think somebody doesn't have something, you got to pick up the phone and ask. Okay. I don't spend a lot of time on the sets asking work breakdowns, CSI divisions, that kind of stuff. That's background information for you to understand, but it's not really covered. Knowing the requirements of a work breakdown structure might be useful as well. That's a big thing. If you had those four things there, I think that'd be the bulk of it. All right, then we got into labor material estimates. I gave some examples here. Again, those examples you don't need to know. I'm just trying to show a real life example of what we're talking about. I don't really ask much about RSVs. All right, then I got into which is the primary way we're going to price things in this class, using subquotes and comparing subquotes between each other. Understand what's important to know on these things. Understand what kinds of things can be different. Understand that you need to know how the sub takes off quantities. Understand how to interpret these things. What kind of things can affect, when I'm using historical data, what kind of things can affect this price? How old is the price? I mean, that's probably the simplest and easiest to understand, right? Nobody here expects to pay 50 cents per gallon of gasoline like my dad talks about, right? Things go up with time, usually. But they don't always go up with time. An example of 2009 to 2011, the Great Recession, construction pricing just cratered, right? So, understand that age can affect things. Understand that region can affect things. You know, I gave the example of sheet metal in Texas versus sheet metal in California. Sheet metal in Texas is completely different because the trades usually pick up their own sheet metal work, whereas in California, all the flashings and everything, there's an entire trade devoted to that. Okay. How project differences can lead to differences in pricing. I told the story about the two projects I had in Oakland, one of which was really long and skinny, one of which was very compact. Even though they were about the same overall square footage, the layout vastly changed the foundations and the shear walls and those kind of things, and drove a 30% difference in concrete price. Talk about sources as historical data, using old bids, that kind of stuff. Talk about schedule values. It can be tricky because subs try to front end load things, or even make just arbitrary distinctions on price just for the sake of doing it formulaically. Change order, similar issue. What metric do we use when we're pricing things? Okay. You wanna use something that's available and correlated and suitable to the precision required. What do I mean by that? Well, if I've got a conceptual drawing that has 2 pages to it, I probably can't get an accurate count on how many cubic yards of concrete is put. So I may be doing it by the square foot, okay? Whereas later on, when I have details of my beams, my columns, my shear walls, I might price concrete by the cubic yard, because I can get that information, it's available, okay? You want something that's correlated. I gave the example of wood framing. You know, there's several different, if you ask me how big is the olive project, I could answer several different ways. I could give you a total square footage of every bit of walking surface. But that probably wouldn't be as closely correlated to the wood framer's number as the area of just the wood framing walking surface, right? Because the framer doesn't have any work to do in the garage. You want to use something that's correlated. The example I used, you don't need to memorize any numbers on these charts, but you should understand what this and the next chart are telling you, okay? That as my project size goes up, my cost per unit generally is coming down, okay? There's a definite trend there amongst construction. And I use the example of Costco, right? You go to Costco and you buy a ginormous roll of toilet, package of toilet paper, you're gonna pay less per roll than you will buy 10 at a time. Limits of historical data, I've kind of already touched on this, things about slowdowns, escalation, project differences. Alright, here's where we talk about efficiency for the first time. We're gonna talk about that more today, so hopefully this will make a little more sense. But an efficiency is a ratio between 2 numbers, not a cost, okay? And I think the best way to illustrate this is these examples I gave, okay? Where I'm trying to understand how many square foot per parking space do I normally have, so that I can use that to understand, A, is my takeoff right? Or B, are there differences in this project that are driving the cost up or down? Okay? I know there's at least 2 questions about efficiencies on this. Okay, these are our most recent lectures. Talked about overhead, labor work, and productivity. Talked about indirect versus direct. The best way I know to say this is, would I incur this cost if I was not doing this specific job? Okay? So if it's coffee and creamer on the job site, I wouldn't be paying for that if I wasn't doing that job. Okay? But if it was advertising for my corporation, I would incur that whether or not I was doing any particular job. Okay? So you can run through the examples and that kind of stuff on this one. I really think that this is a couple of gimme questions. I think I have 2 on it. You guys should know the difference, but they should go pretty quick and this should be pretty easy. You don't see a lot of these. I did not ask you on the exam to run through any of the calculations on that couple of pages. You do not need to do any of these percentage calculations. This is really just so you see how it's done. Okay. Okay, what kinds of things can affect labor wage rates? Things like region, union or not, specifically what trade it is. When am I likely to run across a prevailing wage project? What's that? Mostly government jobs, usually state and federal, perhaps. Okay. All right, labor burden. I don't believe I asked you for any definitions of these, but I do ask you to work this right here. And y'all did that on the self-perform assignment, at least those of y'all that did just plug in numbers from the screen. Okay, productivity. I don't spend really much time on definitions here. What I do for this productivity section is I give you a problem, sort of like what we did on self-perform, simpler. I'll tell you here we've got a crew of 3 masons and 2 laborers. They make this much money. They have a daily output of X. We're looking at a project that's 2,500 feet. What's my labor cost? Okay? If you think about it, that's exactly what we did on a portion of the self-perform assignment. So if you go through and you understand what calculations you did and why on the self-perform assignment, you should be in good shape for that problem. Okay? So all that same stuff. Okay, let's talk now a little bit about the assignments that we've done. So the first assignment was the Excel assignment, right? Go back and look through that. A couple of things I want you to pay particular attention to. I will ask you to calculate the labor burden. I will give you the table. Okay? But you need to understand that I think it was question 3 on the assignment, that you have to build a building permit table. You don't only need to understand how you built the table. I'm not asking you an Excel question about it, but you need to understand how to run the calculation, where you've got to figure out which tier you're in and do the math. Okay, so there's one like that. Also off the Excel assignment, I asked you a couple of different questions about some of the functions. Okay, so be familiar with some of those new functions that you might not have been familiar with before. Just understand what they do. If I'm not giving out Excel, you're not going to be expected to use it, but you should understand, hey, in this situation, would I use conditional formatting or VLOOKUP or those kind of things? Okay? The big part that comes from the Excel assignment is question number 4. You guys remember question number 4 where we had the dewatering issues? Okay. I asked a question that's similar but toned down from that because it is a tight scenario. My situation that I give on the exam is we have 2 different foundation scenarios. One is a mat foundation. You guys know what a mat foundation is? We've got a point tower here. Some of y'all are nodding, but just for anybody that's not. We have a point tower here, 30 stories high, whatever it is. I don't remember what I said to the problem. But one foundation that's frequently used in the Texas area, there is a mat. You will basically pour like an 8 to 12 foot chunk of concrete there. Okay, and that's what's built. So that's one option that the geotechnical engineer gave you. And it has certain time and cost repercussions, which should be outlined in the problem. Then the other option will be for auger cast piles. Auger cast piles, for those of y'all that don't know, in the Gulf Coast, they're pretty prevalent. It's basically you go out there with a drilling rig that has a hollow stem auger, and you drill a hole 80 to 120 feet long. I should go to 120, probably go longer. And then when you back it out, you pump concrete down through the auger and fill it as you're pulling back out. Okay? And you'll group 8 or 10 or 12 of these a lot of times into an area, and then you'll pour a pier cap over the top of them, join them together, and that forms your foundation. Okay? That said, what you really need to know, I just gave you that so you had enough background to understand what I'm saying. I'll give you an auger cast option and a mat option. And I'll ask you which one's cheaper. I'm going to give you a general conditions cost so you can factor in time. I don't do anything with dewatering on it. The way to handle this, if you don't have a spreadsheet, is kind of flip over a sheet of paper. It's right on my desk, by the way. And set it up kind of like a spreadsheet. Set it up, you've got 2 columns. Option 1, option 2. Auger cast versus mat foundation. And then identify what things are changing and make those your rows. If you'll go solve these pieces of those and add them up, you should come up with the answer. Okay? That question is actually broken down into about 4. Okay? Okay, so I'll ask you for individual pieces of it, and then ask for a quick. Okay? I don't know that there's a lot you can prepare for that other than go back and look at question 4 from the Excel assignment and just kind of understand what did I do here and why. Okay. All right. Geotech assignment, I think we already talked about. Please want to revisit that. The next assignment was OST. I have maybe 3 or 4 general OST questions. Okay. And they're mostly in the form of, if I was to tell you to take off a window, what would be the best condition type for that, or not condition type, style type for that, okay? What did I teach you guys to do for windows? Okay, so that's gonna be one of them. Alright, so you'll have a couple of those. You'll have a couple of questions related to OST that are related to what we're going to do today. Okay, I was looking through the test last night, and there's a couple things we're going to get to this afternoon, and those will be fair game. Okay, and I'll try to stress those this afternoon. The next one after that was bid tab. I think we kind of covered some of the bid tab issues. You won't have to do one on the exam. The one after that was self-perform. I think we covered what we need to cover on the self-perform. So, that's what those are going to look like. So let me open the floor up right now to any other questions on the exam. I am told that my exams are tough. I'm also told that they pretty well are exactly what I told y'all to study. Okay? It's just that there's a lot of application, and we've covered a lot of material. Yes, sir.